Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the M3 Market Update. I'm broadcasting live from Miami. I have been traveling around for about 8 days, I believe. So again, apologies, the video's a little bit late, but I'll try to do one of these at least every week or 10 days. Traveling is it's always a bit nutty. Actually, two hotels that I've been in didn't have Wi-Fi, so I've just kind of been racing around chasing Wi-Fi on this trip, believe it or not. So it has delayed me a little bit. So apologies for that. So welcome back. There's a lot going on, as I say, every single week, and apologies for repeating myself, but it's important that everybody realizes that this is a turning in the market, in my opinion, and that is why the narratives are getting so loud, and they've been getting louder and louder since March. I've been talking about that, but you can see the intensity. I'll talk quickly about some activity I've seen on social media that I find very interesting. So not only have we seen kind of more people talking about the fact that their Airbnbs they're not getting, not getting occupancy at the moment. The people aren't renting them out, or it's a lot lower than it has been in previous seasons. So we've seen that. Additionally, what I'm seeing is people exiting the long-term rental market as we start to see rent slowing, which we knew on this channel was going to happen, but many people didn't know. But because of all of the multifamily and then the built to rent, more and more as I am out here, I look at this built to rent as what is actually going to be the missing key, the thing that so many people didn't understand. All of these houses that are being built primarily to rent and to be bought by investors, and actually smaller investors. That's what I'm seeing a lot of, so both with the Airbnb and the long-term rental, I think a lot of investors kind of bought these properties sight unseen based on, a really good write-up, and based on, things that people were saying that sounded logical, like, oh, you're right next to a good school. This area has had this much demographic influx. But the problem with those kinds of statistics from a risk management perspective is it's not really looking into the future. You can't just assume that because there was prior growth, the growth will continue. You really have to look at the macroeconomic factors that's really driving the global economy, and then also the local factors about what could potentially, be an issue in the future. For instance, take Dallas with the short-term rental market and the new regulations there. That has to be very shocking for many. Take Fort Myers, which I talk about in my Substack. At their peak, something like 2,800 short-term rental listings before Ian. Currently today, there are 711. So there's all kinds of things that can happen in an area that can change the direction of that return on investment. And so it's very critical to look not only at the macro, but at the local, and bring that story together. And this is really what I'm trying to do. Where the M3 came from was I wanted to do a macro mortgage market update. And that's really what this is, because what I found missing so much in my time in mortgage was that, they didn't understand macro. I listened as well to all the same people that you've been hearing, and so really didn't understand the market. So, welcome back this week. A lot going on. That Twitter, social media noise that I'm talking about are landlords. It seems like a lot of landlords are starting to realize that the long-term rental space was not everything it's cracked up to be, as well as a short-term rental. So a lot of social media activity on my feed recently, posting some things about people's lives that get upended when their owner changes of their single-family rental. And personally, I grew up in living in single-family rentals. That's not, a lot of people that I know, that's not how they grew up. But I do understand that when your landlord changes, it can have a significant impact on your life. And they can try and force you out. Now, I have a kind of crazy story of my childhood. I guess I'm going to share, wasn't planning, but actually living in a single family rental where the landlord actually didn't realize we were in the home, but it was arson for the insurance money. And my grandmother and I happened to be at home at the time. So put it this way, things can happen when people get desperate and need money. And often the only thing that they're thinking about are themselves. And I'm not, this is not some sort of, I don't want to talk about capitalism today. I'm a believer in capitalism. But I do feel for the people that are going to have their lives upended as these landlords head for the exits. And guys, they're starting, and I can just see from the comments that this is speeding up. It's just speeding up. And so here, in my Substack this week, I'm talking a lot about what I'm seeing in Florida. But I really am talking about it because I want you guys to understand Florida in many ways back in the last crisis drove the last crisis. And, this time around, just because, again, I don't know. I think that maybe I still think that something's going to be different. And so I kind of thought that Texas was going to be the epicenter. And believe me, they are going to play a close second to Florida as well as California. But Florida is always the epicenter. I wrote my Substack this week, and I feel like I could have written a 500-page book, and maybe that's what this will always be about, because there's just so much to say, so much to explain, so much to show, because, I have a weird perspective myself, just having worked in a lot of different industries, been working 2 jobs basically almost since I was in high school. And so that has just given me a more rounded view. And so my point in this is that when you are listening to other people talk about what's going on in the housing market, understand their vested interests, look up their background, look at the company they're working for. I think it's very important to understand what's coloring their perspective. I'm not trying to say these people are evil and that they really are trying to get to swindle people. I'm just saying that their perspective is different. My perspective comes from having, lived through this before, this crisis, as well as, kind of being on the other side of the tracks, however you want to take that, as I grew up. And so I am looking at things very differently. So keep that in mind as you read and you listen to people talking about the housing market, because there are a lot of vested interests out there, and that vested interest could simply just be livelihood. It's not anything massive. So my point of all of this is there's going to be a lot of churn, I think, about to start happening, a lot of movement where we have been frozen in many ways, especially in the existing home market since January. I honestly do believe the existing market is about to start churning. And so based on some of the things that I'm seeing anecdotally, I kind of thought that would happen probably September, October, and that could be how the timeline comes out. But what I'm seeing now tells me that that could happen sooner. And so quickly, I just want to tell you a little bit about what I've seen so far. So Charlotte County, where Trish, Florida Sun, took me around, amazing person, must follow, please follow her, she's great. Took me around to a whole bunch of different neighborhoods. A lot of them were multifamily, a lot of them were built to rent. And guys, it's just hard to explain unless you see it. And I have a video that I'm working on. I don't have great audio visual skills. And so I'm working on it, and I hope to get that uploaded by Thursday for you guys, so you can actually see this at scale, because when you video over this, you're just driving and for miles and miles and miles of new builds for multifamily, new builds for build to rent. And some of these are just so hideous. They look like prison barracks. Then you have the lower duplex spec homes that, it's hard to explain. They're everywhere. They're an infestation. The porta potties just line the road. And so, what I want everyone to ask themselves when you're thinking about this market at the moment is what happens next? What happens when some of these homes aren't completed because the funding's run out? What happens when this construction stops? What happens when there's not enough people to rent these single family rentals? What happens when there's not enough people to rent the multifamily? So rather than kind of going out there with your fists up, what I would encourage everyone to do is just ask yourself these questions. What actually happens when the music stops? What happens in these oversaturated markets where you have 15,000 Airbnbs and Airbnb will only show you 300 results? And we're in a downturn because people can't afford to travel because they have to pay their student loans, and their credit card bills are suddenly way higher because those rates are starting to have an impact, and their access to credit is way down. You can watch a lot of other, YouTubes. I recommend Your Dollar University as one that will talk about what's happening in the banking industry right now and the clamp down on lending. And so, honestly, guys, in many ways, nothing is different. Nothing at all is different. And I know that's hard because everybody's been doing that credit quality gospel singing. But let me just say to you, DSCR loans, debt service coverage ratio loans, are Alt-A. They are stated income loans. They're ninja loans. And they're basically, and so here we are thinking, okay, well, last time it was the strippers and it was XYZ. Well, no, I know my company, we were always lending to prime borrowers. So subprime, and honestly, was just non-traditional products by, at the time, credit-worthy borrowers, theoretically, for many lenders. Now, I'm not saying for other lenders. There are plenty of lenders out there that did some crazy stuff. But what I want to argue to you today is that pretty much it's always crazy. It's crazy stuff because where there's a will, there's a way to make these things work. And in that borrower is not truly, like, if they've made bad decisions, if they haven't done proper risk management, then together a really bad mistake can be made. And so I don't know that it's always greed, it's always fraud, although I can tell you I'm seeing a lot of that. It is often just trying to help people, believe it or not, trying to help people to get into a home. And so again, I think we have to go back and really expand our understanding of the last crisis to know that we're actually setting up for the same thing. The super prime, as we've been calling them, the top 20%, all of whom have probably made some really bad decisions, bought too many properties, are over leveraged. This is going to be the catalyst. This is what's going to start everything. And that contagion will bleed over to your regular average American prime borrowers. Already your FHA, which are typically first-time homeowners, although that program has really gone off the rails into what it was intended to be. And then your VA veterans, they're already starting to significantly struggle. And I would argue that this is exactly how it happened last time. You saw that weakness there first. You then, because a lot of people call that government-sponsored subprime, and guys, it really is. I mean, you see credit scores in the low 600s, high 500s for these FHA loans and V loans. So then that kind of bleeds. Then you have the investor class, and really, I would call the investor class. This time the super prime, we kind of called them the subprime last time because it was around the non-traditional products. But those folks probably wouldn't have gotten loans where I worked if their credit scores hadn't been high. So who knows back then, right? We need to do a little more. I honestly feel like I have to go back and study more in the kind of credit quality of some of those non-traditional products, because I know from my book specifically, it was decent credit quality, but it's the non-traditional component. But then it starts the contagion to your prime borrowers, just as they need to access the equity in their homes because they're coming under stress from a liquidity crunch, small or large. If let's just say your regular average American, suddenly, they've been using their credit cards buy groceries, etc. Inflation kind of got out of control, so they had to put more and more on those credit cards. Then those rates started to rise. So guess what? They're losing access to credit, which then makes them make other decisions in their lives, which could be, hey, I need to take out a home equity loan. Well, right as they're thinking, I need to access that equity, the contagion has already spread, and that home value is already depreciating. So you can see how this cycle really starts to heat up. And it starts with your FHA, VA, which we're starting to see, and your non-traditional products, which we're also starting to see. I can tell you in the portfolios I oversee that a lot of my Fannie Freddie that is under stress are investor loans. And so then it's going to then just sort of snowball. So we are, in my opinion, it's taken some time, and we've kind of sat here on the top, and we've had a couple of things impact it, like the media going full court press, trying to convince everyone to buy a new build has prolonged this. But as we saw with those housing starts and those new home sales being lower in June, things are starting to slow down. And I would tell you for sure, when the 10-year gets, where it is right now, everybody's models start blowing up. And that is exactly what I imagine is going to happen. Unless we start to see that 10-year and kind of those rates go down. Okay, so there's a lot going on in Florida specifically. I talk about in my Substack this week about Fort Myers. I talk about all the for sale signs I'm seeing there. And then with layer on this insurance crisis, if we are in such a hot economy, and Florida is such a great place, why are there for sale signs in Fort Myers right now? I would argue that, yeah, maybe they're asking for too much, but there are a lot of for sale signs. And just some anecdata, I'm hearing more and more people tell me, recently there was nothing for sale in my neighborhood. Had someone in Portland say this to me, and then suddenly overnight, 3 to 4 signs went up. Again, this is anecdata. We're tracking it, and I'll be talking about that in just a second. And so we will start to see it bear out in the data, but it always takes time. It comes with a lag. And I will tell you the other thing, that with all of my research, all of these data sources are limited. And I know for sure that the local private developers, a lot of them aren't listing on your regular listing sites. And some of them have made inruns around permitting. There's a big lawsuit out in California, about permits. There's all kinds of permits, but my point is that there are ways to get around the permitting system. Then layer on top of that, again, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, but that survey of construction that tracks the housing starts, there's something going on there. Again, it is also a survey, and we know that survey participation is down. So I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit in this show, and it's probably because I'm a little discombobulated. When I told everybody what I was doing this summer, a lot of people said, that sounds like a lot of fun. Those are the people that don't travel that much, because travel is always a little nutty. And post-COVID, it's even worse. And so not a lot of things work. Every day is just a comedy of errors, missed exits, and wrong turns would be how I would describe it. And so I'm a little off kilter. So just bear with me on this. But without further ado, I'll go through the updates quickly. I understand that it's really hard to get a picture of the national market with these quick updates. But if you're interested, I have a summary form. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn or on this YouTube channel. I'll give you my email where I can send you the full form, where you can get a true side-by-side, similar to the way I put in the Substack last week. Okay, so here we go. Top cities with the largest percent increase in inventory week over week. This is for the week 7/16 to 7/23. So Costa Mesa was up there, not a ton of properties there, but this was kind of an interesting movement. Could be a data issue. When I compare it to its average, it was only about 1%, but the increase week over week was 9.5%. San Ramon coming back up into the top 5. They'd kind of taken a breather. One YouTube user told me that might have been due to the fact that a lot of people do short-term rental in the summer because there's really nowhere else to go, and the hotels are too expensive or booked up. So it could be that the short-term rental thing didn't work out, and now they're listing them for sale. Not sure. If you have some insight, let me know. But California is making it's like revenging into the top 5 again. San Ramon at about 8% increase. Encinitas at 7.5% increase. Oakton, Virginia at another 7% increase. This is very interesting. Small suburb of DC. I also saw DC kind of show up in an interesting spot we'll talk about later. So if anybody has any insight into the DC area, please let me know. I also heard about kind of a sale there, kind of distress, listed at 1.9 million, actually closed for cash at 1 million. So, there's something interesting there. If anybody has any insight, let me know. San Jose up at 6%. That's your top 5. But 2 honorable mentions this week. Brattleboro was, I cannot say that. Brattleboro was up at about 6%, and Nashville at number 8 was at 5.47%. Again, I kind of feel like Nashville is the place to watch. And so we'll be watching that closely because they've been seeing some movement there past couple of weeks. And so could it be kind of this real turn where acceptance starts to become a little bit more than like right now, I'd say acceptance is at 0.05%. So we'll see. Okay. Top cities with large percent increase in inventory compared to the 6-week average. Brattleboro is up at 16.67% compared to average. Encinitas up 14.45% compared to average. San Ramon at 9.73% compared to average. Carlsbad at 8.96% compared to average, and Oakton at 7.42% compared to average. So again, California staying, this is a move, right? Because it's compared to the average as well. Okay, so top cities with largest percent increase in inventory from start. Same top 10, a little bit of movement within those. So I'll go through these quickly, but San Ramon it's at 106%. Coeur d'Alene, 87.82%. San Francisco at 62%. Denver at 62%. Austin at 55%. Just heard from another user, our follower in Austin, that they've seen signs going up in their neighborhood. So we'll be watching that closely. San Jose up at 46.5%. This came up from number 9 last week. Portland at 46%, up from number 8. Carlsbad at 42%, up from number 10. Galveston at 42%, and Seattle at 41.89%. Okay, for rent. Top cities with highest percent increase in single-family rental listings. El Cajon at 26% increase. San Diego at 8.86%. San Diego has not been on the top of anything, so that market has been pretty strong. So I want to keep looking at that one. Washington, D.C., so this is where getting an increase in single-family listings. Very interesting, especially in conjunction with that Oakton, Virginia move. So up 8.13%. Destin up at 6.9%. Augusta at 6.2%. Okay, top cities with the highest percent increase of single-family rental listings to average. Winter Garden at almost 21%. Augusta to average at 17%. El Cajon at 15.5%. Destin at almost 12%, and Oceanside up at almost 12%. Top cities with highest percent decrease of single-family rental listings. San Ramon is down, so that's interesting because that could be the actual pattern we're looking at, that you're seeing them come off of the listing for rent and going to listing for sale, because we saw those increases in listing for sale. Rosemary Beach down 11%. Sevierville down in listings for rent. what I'm seeing them list those for rent in Sevierville are absolute insanity. I don't know that anyone would rent anything in that area for those amounts. I mean, it's just delusional, guys. It's somebody who does not understand the local market and bought this sight unseen. Okay. And then Bakersfield down at 3% and Dallas at almost down 2.85%. Interesting with Dallas too. That again, that's going to be a very, maybe they're pulling them off to also list for sale. Top cities with the highest percent decrease in average rate. This is for Airbnb from June to July for the same week. Now this is significant. So basically, same time of the month to same time of the month is how I did this. And so Destin was down negative 46.6%. Rosemary Beach in Florida down negative 44%. New York down 42%. Encinitas down almost 42%. Chicago down almost 38%. Okay, so that's, to me, it's things like this that are going to drive people to list these homes for sale. And so everything takes time, but we're starting to see we're starting to see deterioration in those average daily rates, and that is going to on the Airbnb side. We're also starting to see vacancy creep up on the long-term rental side as all of this multifamily comes online, and as people simply can't afford it anymore and start to consolidate homes. Now, these are all theories until we can prove them all the way out. But I think what we're starting to see are a lot of the themes that I talked about at the beginning of the year are starting to get legs. And I think from here, as we say, gradually and then all at once. Some quick notes on commercial real estate for the week. Big news last week was Cerberus missing some loan payments on some Marriott hotels. I tweeted out a joke. Is this why the ice machines are out of order? But guys, I actually talked about this back in February or March. I'm a frequent traveler, and so I am a Marriott person, and I just couldn't believe the degradation in some of these properties. Like no food, no internet, even back then, no ice machines. So I tweeted a joke. Is this why the ice machines are out of order? But Cerberus, this won't be their only starring role in this crisis. They are the ones who bought my company last time around. I became their girl Friday, teaching them about the mortgage market in my limited understanding. And then ultimately, we were saved by the government. So I think that's a really great example of private equity not having to learn its lesson. And they are out there again. Here with this missed loan payment, also First Key, that's their single family rentals. So they will have a few starring roles as well as other private equity this week. So encourage you to check out the Substack where I have that article linked. Okay, and then I'll end with the insurance situation because the insurance situation is going to impact homeowners and commercial real estate. It is just getting out of control, and it's moving, outside. So we've heard a lot about Florida and California, with what happened recently in Vermont. It's going to be a national issue. And right now, due to the credit crunch and the dollar shortage, because these insurers, they deal a lot in the non-bank space. And they need to be able to get those dollars. They need to be able to rehypothecate that risk, meaning somehow they have to cut their exposure by selling the risk to somebody else, like a reinsurance kind of thing. Well, those markets are drying up. And as those markets dry up, guess what happens? Those costs have to come back to you. And you as a homeowner, you as a renter, you as a landlord, you as an owner of one of these commercial real estate buildings. And so what we're about to see, these costs, these increased costs, although certain components of inflation are going down, some just will not be able to go down, and they will impact you, and they will also impact this market in a way that I think that you're going to start seeing slowly, but then very quickly inventory march to the market because they have no other choice. Okay, so that's it for me today as I have to scurry off to my next, to my client. I'll be doing some traveling on the weekends, some traveling during the week, looking at neighborhoods and areas here in Florida. Please comment. Let me know of a, great insight about a Sarasota new build that I'm going to go visit. So, give me the addresses, tell me what you're seeing, question me. I love it. Just leave a comment and I can go check it out while I'm here in Florida. Not exactly sure how long I'll be here, but I'll keep you posted. So you can reach me on Twitter at M3_Melody, at LinkedIn at Melody Wright, WRIGHT, Substack, the M3 Melody Substack, and then of course here on YouTube. Guys, I really appreciate you watching each week and bearing with me as we kind of finish up the summer and to what I see is going to be a very interesting end to the summer. And so thanks for joining, and I'll talk to you guys soon.